Hello, and welcome to our second grade classroom. My name is Miss Gorder, and I will be your child's teacher for the next year. I look forward to teaching your child and working with you throughout this year. As we go throughout this video, I will be talking about communication with parents, my overall approach to teaching math, the primary skills your child will be learning this year, the routines we will use in our math classroom, the different types of manipulatives we will use, what a typical lesson plan will look like, why it is important for my students to explain their answers, technology used throughout the classroom, assessments, and much more. After this video, you are free to ask any questions you may have about what your child will be learning or doing in our classroom this year. Communication is very important between students, parents, and myself. I do not want you as parents to feel as if you cannot talk to me. I have an open door policy, so please contact me if you would like to talk about your child or what they are doing in the classroom. As far as daily or weekly communication, I will have a monthly newsletter that will be sent out to each family at the end of each month for the next month. The newsletter will have what we will be doing in the classroom during the next month and some of the highlights from the previous month. As for daily communication, I'll be using Seesaw. Seesaw is an app that gives parents an immediate and personalized window into each of their child's school day, helping to answer the question, "What did you do at school today?" Seesaw empowers students to independently document their learning and provides an audience for work, their peers, parents, or the world. Each student will have their own login information for Seesaw. I will have the teacher account, and then each family can download the app, and throughout the day or week, I will post projects, activities, assignments, and etc. On Seesaw, you can see what your child has been working on and the progress he or she has made. If you are not comfortable with using Seesaw or would like more information, please let me know, and I can communicate between you and myself in a different form. I want to make sure that you feel like you are a part of our classroom and are involved with the things we are doing in the classroom. You may ask what my overall approach is to teaching, but I do not have just one overall. I think it's beneficial for my classroom and my students to have more than one way to teach. I believe that cooperative learning and contextual learning are both very important in the classroom. Cooperative learning is important because it is showing students how to exchange ideas and formulate to an answer. For example, not all students like to solve math problems the same way. There is more than one strategy when doing math, and by incorporating cooperative learning in the classroom, all students can learn multiple strategies to solve one problem. It is also important because what might work for one student might not work for another student. Contextual learning is important because the students are learning new information and also relating to past experiences and known information. While the students' hands are engaged, mind should be questioning, sorting through sensory input, and making connections. What I also like to say, hands on, minds on. The primary math skills that we will be focusing on in our second grade classroom are based off of the Common Core State Standards. One primary skill that we will be focusing on is solving problems that involve adding and subtracting. So for this example, one student is adding 8 plus 3, which equals 11, and another student is subtracting 8 minus 3, which equals 5. The second primary skill that we will be focusing on is understanding place value. So for this example, we have place values of hundreds, tens, and ones. So they have 8 100s, they have 8 tens, and then they have 9 ones. So they add all of that together, 800 plus 80 plus 9 equals 889. Another primary skill that we will be focusing on is measuring and estimating lengths in standard units. Here's a few pictures to represent what we will be doing when we measure and estimate lengths in standard units. We will also work with time and money. In this example on the left, the child is doing the time on the clock, and the one on the right, the child is working with money. We will do these throughout the year, and every day we will focus on money, as I will go into further on in the next few slides. The last primary skill we will be doing in our classroom is identifying the characteristics of shapes. So here's an example of different shapes and how many sides they have and pictures of what they look like. In our classroom, we will use Math Calendar, Math Talk, and Today's Number to begin each day or lesson. Math Calendar is a few different tasks to get started in the morning. First, it involves the calendar for the day. A student will go up to the board and tell us the date of today, what yesterday was, and what tomorrow will be. Once the student has done the calendar, they will write it on the board. Once we have finished the calendar, we will go on to work on money. One student will put the amount of money using coins for the school day number. Once they have put the coins into the piggy bank, they will have to prove it to the rest of the class. So they will have to do, for example, in the piggy bank right now, is a dime, which is 10 cents, a penny, which is 1, so we'll add 10 plus 1 plus 1 equals 12. Once they have put the coins in the piggy bank, they'll have to prove it like I just did, explaining how much money they have in their bank. Another student will come up and write the number using cents. So for in the bottom left, we have 12 cents. And another student will come up and they will write the amount of money we have using the dollar sign. So for this example, we have $0.12. Once we have finished those tasks, we will move on to today's number. I will pick a number between 1 and 100, and the students have to take turns guessing what the number is. Once the students have guessed the number, each of them have to write at least 3 equations that equals today's number using addition or subtraction. For example, today's number is 22. The examples that students have written on the board are 10 plus 10 plus 2 equals 22, 10 plus 12 equals 22, 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 2 equals 22, 11 plus 11 equals 22. Once they have all written it down, they will come up to the board and write it down like this example. Then, once all have written on the board, we will go through the equations and discuss how all students did their equations differently. You may be wondering what type of manipulatives we use in the classroom. We will use all assortments of the manipulatives. The type of them we will use all depends on the lesson we are doing. A few that will be available in the classroom for students include base 10 blocks, which are in the bottom right corner, the number line, which is in the top right, money, which is in the bottom left, and interlocking cubes, which is in the top left. We can use these to become more familiar with each one. Manipulatives are important because they help verbalize the students' thinking, gaining confidence in their abilities to find solutions to math problems using methods that they come up with themselves without relying on directions from the teacher, and much more. A typical lesson in our classroom starts with a conversation between my students and myself to begin with. We will start each lesson by relating to information we have already learned. So for example, last week we learned how to add with 2 problems, but this week we'll be learning how to add with 3 numbers, which is also called a number string. Students will use their math journals, and I will have examples on the board for them to do in their journal. Once students have finished doing the problems, I will have a student explain how they solved the problem. It is important for students to explain their answers so I know the process of how they are getting the answer. It is also important for students to explain to their peers in case another student would like to use the same strategy. Like I stated before, not all students solve math problems the same way. There is more than one strategy to use while doing math. Something that may work for one student may work for another student, or it may not work for another student. These are 2 examples of students explaining their reasoning to their peers. As for assessments, I will use observations, projects, tests, and various questioning. By doing this, it shows me what my students have learned and how I need to modify my teaching to make sure that all students are comprehending the material, not only partial of the class. For technology, we will use the Promethean board and iPads in our classroom, which we are so lucky to have. The Promethean board will display our lesson for the day. It may be an introduction to the lesson, questions from the lesson, or quick images to get the students engaged right away. iPads will also be used in our classroom. There are many different apps that can be used to practice math. We will be starting with Splash Math and Reflex Math. For Reflex Math, each student is given their own login information, and the app keeps the student's progress, and the teacher can see how the student is doing. It will give me an idea of what the student has mastered and what still needs to be practiced. As the year goes on, more apps can be introduced to the classroom to practice math skills. These are all the benefits of using technology in the classroom. Students can explore, they collaborate with their peers, they communicate, they're more engaged, they can create, they can connect to things they're working on, they extend their learning, which makes them lifelong learners, and they evaluate what they are doing. Since we have access to iPads in the classroom, we will be using an online math program in our classroom. We will use Reflex Math because it is a way for students to have fun while doing their math facts. It keeps the students engaged and is helping them practice their facts. Not only can they do this at school, but they can also do it at home. It is creating a school-home connection and helping students identify that they do not have to only do these things at school, but they can also do them at home as long as they ask their parents first. Online math programs have some benefits that include engagement, school-home connections, standards aligned, instant feedback, increased instructional time, data collection, and much more. Each student's accounts can be monitored by myself to see how the student is doing and what they may be struggling, so I can spend more time reviewing the material that is needed. This is an example of what students may be doing on Reflex Math. They have to get the frog all the way on the lily pads to the ground. So the students have to go 7 plus 2, 22 minus 10, 21 minus 11, and 4 plus 2. If the students answer incorrectly, the frog has to start over because it fell into the water and got eaten. As for bulletin boards in the classroom, I have 3 big bulletin boards in our classroom. One of them is dedicated to math and what we are learning. Each unit, I will update the bulletin board for the students to reference while we are working on the unit. There are more resources on our class website. Feel free to look at it, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you. That is a great question. If you didn't hear the question, it was, what are those colored rods that I can see in the back of the classroom? Those colored rods are called Cuisenaire rods. They are mathematics learning aids for students to help with hands-on ways to explore mathematics and learn concepts, such as adding or subtracting. For example, they may use the rods as items to add with. 2 of the rods plus 3 other equals 5. As students get older, they can also use Cuisenaire rods for fractions. These are also a type of manipulatives that we will have in the classroom. Another question, why do students have to spend so much time explaining how they did problems? Like I stated earlier in the presentation, it is important for students to explain how they solved a problem because it's showing me the strategy that they used and also showing their peers the best strategy that worked best for them. The strategy that they used may also be beneficial to their peers. It is also used as an assessment for me to make sure the student has understood what we have been learning. Thank you for taking the time to look at this video. I look forward to teaching your child and working with you this year. If you have any questions throughout the year, please do not be afraid to contact me. I look forward to seeing you soon.